One thing I want you guys to make perfectly clear is I'm not here as a PBR salesman. That's the last thing I want to do here. If your kids want to go to events, great. Today I'll give you just a straight idea of the value they can get from it, and you guys decide if that's right for your kids or not, all right? But the subject I'm even more interested in talking about is the recruiting side of things. We'll have slides as a basic outline because I have a half hour, and if I didn't have an outline, this would go on for an hour and a half, all right? So I'm gonna try to keep together on the slides, keep on topic, but if you have a question at any point in time, just raise your hand, all right? Whether it's PBR related, recruiting related, and we'll do our best to make sure that everybody leaves here with the information they came here to see, all right? So just quick background on myself. My name is Jordan Chiero. I am the scouting director for PBR Ohio. I was a college coach for 6 years. So I'm gonna tell you guys how I use PBR, just complete. When I'm going to talk about PBR is going to be complete transparency and authenticity. So I'm going to tell you guys how I use it as a college coach, see if that's going to benefit your players, all right? So I most recently was at Wright State University, started at Otterbein, had the third arm surgery. My doctor famously said, you can either keep hitting baseballs or hold your daughter when you're 50. So I decided to get into the scouting thing, and that's how the PBR route happened. This is now my eighth year with PBR. It's crazy how fast it's gone. My 6th year with the Texas Rangers. So I've been lucky enough to see this game. As a player, I played Division II at Tiffin University, was lucky enough to play professionally for a short period of time. So I've been lucky to see this game from almost every level as either a player or a coach. So I think that's a cool part of my job is helping guys find the right fit, and we'll get into that here in a second. But from strictly a college coach's standpoint, how PBR creates value is, especially during the off season, these coaches are getting hundreds of emails daily. I don't care if it's Division III level, Division I level, anywhere in between, all right? In Ohio, I think we're lucky, and I'm not just saying this because I'm out here talking to you guys, but we have phenomenal college coaches and we have phenomenal high school and summer coaches, and the relationships built there because there are so many college baseball programs in Ohio is really strong, all right? So this isn't a blanket approach to everything, but the fact of the matter is with social media, how the transfer portal is, now even, it was just, when I was in this 10 years ago, it was mostly Division I's recruiting the entire country. Now everybody's recruiting the entire country, all right, trying to find the best baseball players because the information is much more accessible than it used to be 10 years ago, if that makes sense. So how PBR works is you get a player tip, one of the hundreds you're going to get a day from a summer coach. If you trust that summer coach, you quickly look up his PBR stuff, you give him a quick call, you talk to him, whatever. If you've never talked to this summer coach, high school coach, PBR gives coaches a way to have a third party kind of no dog in the fight evaluation of a player, because we want guys to go and play in college, but we're not pushing guys to specific colleges. I'm going to get in how do we connect with colleges here in a second and the phone calls we have, but we just want these guys to play at the next level. Where they play is completely up to them. So this gives college coaches the funnel from player tip into being able to verify from video and stats how we evaluated them at one of our showcases. So Bridging the Gap, that's a fancy title one of our social media guys came up with, which is a cool way of saying that the best part about our job is helping these guys find a fit at the next level. I know that sounds kind of cheesy and cliche, but when you analyze our job, it's running 100 showcases a year and then trying to create a platform for these guys. And I promise you, I don't enjoy running 100 showcases a year, all right? That's not why I do this job, all right? I think from the outside looking in, a lot of times we kind of get an American Idol kind of feel from us, meaning we create a platform, they go up there and we either press the red X or the yellow buzzer. I'm not sure if that's American Idol exactly, but you know one of those shows, you know what I'm saying. And I promise I have no interest being Simon Cowell, one of those judges either, all right? Why we do this is we want to create that platform, but then we also try to connect with college coaches, and I think that's something that players don't necessarily see, and sometimes high school summer coaches don't know that we actually do. All right, I'll get into the grading system here in a second and how we email college coaches after events, but that's a big part of what we do because my own personal story is when I was in high school, I was getting highly recruited as a pitcher, had the first arm surgery, lost a ton of scholarships in a short period of time, and the only school that kept my scholarship was Tiffin University. And I had that scholarship before, and this shows you how much I thought I was going to go to Tiffin University. All I had to do was write an essay to get into the school, and my mom made me do it. I was like, I'm not going here. And I spelled Tiffin wrong through that entire essay. So that shows you that shows you how much I thought I was going to end up at Tiffin University. But that's where I ended up. I mean, and it's, if you've been to Tiffin, it's really cool athletically, the facilities, but the city, I wouldn't think there's many people going on vacations to Tiffin, Ohio. All we had when I was there was a Walmart and a Subway. If I wanted Chipotle, I had to drive 45 minutes. But it was the best experience of my life. Today I've seen 2 or 3 of my teammates that are now high school coaches, getting to hug them, say what's up. All right, I've been in weddings, I've seen kids born. So I think that if you have the opportunity to play college baseball, it goes way deeper than just continue to play the game you love. I think it can set you up for the rest of your life. So that's the big reason why I'm in this, and I know a bunch of our staff is in this. All right, so from a PBR specific point of view, all right, what you get out of workout, if you come to a showcase, either winter or summer with us, all right, we do a typical pro style workout. They call it pro style to make it sound cooler. It's the same showcase that every scouting company in the world does, where you're talking Baseball America, Perfect Game, whatever. The player's going to take the ground balls, all right, they're going to take BP, catchers are going to do the pop times, outfielders are going to throw to home plate, pitchers will do their bullpen. If it's outdoors, if it's in the summer, we'll play a game, all right? And during that, we'll talk about the winter one because that's what we're in right now, all right? In the winter, we're measuring more tools than actual baseball translation, all right? And I'll be completely transparent with that because how would we measure if it translates to an actual game? We're throwing around the idea of having live at bats, but when you get into the insurance side of things, kids getting hurt with arms and guys not being ready to throw, that's something corporate's talking about. But for now, we don't have the ability to see how a guy holds runners from the stretch. We don't have the ability to see in the winter if a guy can handle a curveball. But in a second, I'll get to how we talk to high school and summer coaches, try to make sure that we're getting a better evaluation. But from our standpoint in the winter, we're trying to create an environment where they can show off raw tools, and these college coaches can see if it translates in the spring or summer. So the value of going to a winter event, it's like a resume builder, all right? Like these kids we can't just walk into Google and get a job interview. So I think during the winter, the value is trying to create a job interview for yourself in the spring or summer, all right? Where a college coach sees some film, sees some numbers, and goes, all right, I need to go out and see that kid in the spring or summer. I think that's the value of winter showcase. Now, it's not impossible to get a job in the winter. It's usually on the mound, but I've been doing this for over a decade, and that rarely happens. What you're trying to do in the winter is get your name on that college coach's list, all right? So how we measure those tools, Trackman is the most advanced ball tracking device on the planet, all right? For hitters, it measures your exit velocity, average, top, your distance, the average, the top, and it's also measuring launch angle and all that stuff that we don't really use a ton in the evaluation process, but it has that as well. It measures to the inch how far we're hitting it. We do use it for hitters, obviously, because exit velo, I mean, you can get on social media and some guys love it, some guys hate it. Whether you like it or not, like there's a reason that there's an NFL combine, all right? And there's a reason that we all watch it, and it's because game will always take precedent, but the ability to measure these raw physical tools is important because you could be a really good player, but if you don't have the subsequent physical tools to go on and play at the next level, the game's going to be too fast for you, okay? And while Trackman comes into handy, I think it's even more on the pitching side. The pitching side, if you're a hitting coach, excuse my language, we're getting our ass kicked right now from pitchers because they can now measure and quantify why guys are getting outs when we couldn't back in the day. So we talked to our Trackman guy, the guy who invented Trackman. He pitched in the show. We talked to him on a weekly basis, but the ability for these pitching coaches to now take this information, see what a guy does well, and create pitch design, or say, hey man, like your slider's not doing what it should, like it's not pairing with your fastball, why don't we try to make it a more 12-6 breaking ball, or vice versa. Like if a slot fits better for a slider, they can do all that. Or a guy has an outlier trait in one of his pitches. So if he's a guy that has an outlier spin rate or outlier horizontal break, that's going to be a different look for hitters, if that makes sense. And those guys get outs. When I first started doing this at Wright State almost a decade ago, if you weren't 6'2" and either 88 to 90 or lanky where they thought you could get to 88 to 90, you're kind of overlooked. But now we're able to see the value in the non-6'2", obvious, looks the part right away. Like, if you look at a 5'10" arm that has a low release height, and that guy has a high spin rate and some high induced vertical break, which is just measuring how much the ball rises compared to which is not gravity, then that's giving a hitter an incredibly tough look. And vice versa, if you're 6'6" and you have a high spin rate, like, and you threw 90, like, and that guy always got barreled and we didn't know why. Like, but he was 6'6" and 90, so he got a job at the next level. But now if he has a high spin rate, you're realizing that he's taking the value away from being 6'6" because he's giving too much ride through the zone for a hitter. Now, if that guy has a low spin rate, he's almost impossible to hit. All right, so it's coming from 6'6", and it has that sinking bowling ball action where now we can actually quantify that versus used to just sit back with a radar gun and see what you saw. So from Trackman, I think provides, and don't put this on social media because I don't want the other two to get mad, but I think Trackman provides a lot more information than any other technology that we use, and it's very important for college coaches. And the last thing they can do, especially with arms, is they can just take this information and sit at their desk and be like, all right, this is what our guy right now, that's our Friday night guy, this is what his fastball looks like. That kid's fastball is really similar, or this is what this guy's breaking ball looks like. Here's our closer that has this unreal slider, and they go, this kid has very similar traits. Let's bring this guy in and see if he can get some outs. That makes sense to everybody. So yes, it's for an evaluation standpoint, but I think that quick snippet, and I only have a half hour, I could talk for an hour on that alone, can give you an idea of how we're actually using this to evaluate pitchers. It's not just, okay, this guy has the highest velocity, this guy has the highest spin rate, this guy's ranked here, this guy's ranked there. And that's not how college coaches do it either. All right. Now we also have Swift, which is our new way we measure speed. All right. It has the traditional 60, but it also has your 10-yard, 30-yard split, and your max sprint speed. Okay. Why I think that's very important is because, one, you don't ever run in a straight line in baseball, and two, I think it helps positionally for guys that maybe aren't straight line 60 guys. A corner guy that has a faster 10-yard sprint speed or a 30-yard sprint speed, you can measure how well he can play the game in those short spaces, which they play 99% of the time. A corner guy needs to be agile in those limited spaces. He doesn't need to go track down a ball very often. So I think that provides more value for the player, where a college coach can look at that and say, okay, maybe he runs a 7.4, but this 10 yards really, really quick, so he might be able to move better in short spaces, and vice versa. You might have an outfielder that you recommend to us or a college coach, and you go, I think he's going to run a 6.6, and he runs a 6.9, all right? And then you go, but you look at his max sprint speed, and it's real, all right? He might just not know how to start on a 60-yard dash, or like he might need to get better at learning how to start, but in the game, he might be able to fly when he's rounding bases or he gets good reads off the bat. So if he has that max sprint speed, I can look at that from an evaluator or a college coach and be like, okay, this is an outfielder that might not know how to start a 60, or we need to work on his acceleration a little bit, and once those two match, then he's gonna be a big-time athlete. You're now looking at maybe a 6'5"-ish runner. Cool, if that makes sense to everybody. So I think that's the value that Swift adds. And then Blast, I know a lot of you guys use it. I use it on a daily basis. Incredibly valuable for not only the development side of things, but from the scouting side of things. Basically, it's the radar gun for hitters. Like, it measures your bat speed, how fast you move, how fast you rotate. But the cool part for me is I can look at it and say, okay, well, this guy right now has better bat speed, all right? And he might be more productive, but I look at this guy and he's rotating faster and his bat path is all jacked up. So if I look at the bat path and go, all right, if we clean this up, this is the better athlete. Versus if you're just watching it from the naked eye and you don't have this information, player A might look a lot better now, but in 2 years, if this guy gets developed, he cleans up the bat path, he has more potential for that elite bat speed. Now college coaches, and when we're evaluating guys, we can take that information and say, all right, make our decision. Do we want the more productive bat now, or do we have the time to give this kid 2 years and he might be better in the long run? Cool. So that's how we kind of use our tech. The other stuff we have is personal evaluations. Either myself or our assistant scouting director, Genesis, is doing those. All right, we're watching the film, we're breaking everything down, a quick paragraph-ish evaluation. All right, you also get player video and social media. Our social media guy is the best in the country. He's the one videotaping me right now. If you ever see any cool stuff on PBR, Instagram or Twitter, I promise you that ain't me in the lab doing that. I have no idea how he does that. He puts together these cool videos of these guys, and it's not only like it could help from a scouting standpoint, but it's also creating memories for these dudes where they can go back, look at an event, have a cool video that they can show people and look back on. So that's another, it might not really resonate with us, and it doesn't resonate with me at all because I could care less when I was that age, but with the kids that are growing up now, sometimes that really matters to them. Like, the social media side is important, so we try to do that as at a high of a level as possible as well. All right. So what players get that you can't see? Okay, so this is more of the going back to the bridging the gap and understanding. One second. All right, this computer has a mind of its own. So this is another thing that we do that I don't think the outside knows, all right? So like I said, I want to be completely transparent when I'm talking to you guys. We give everybody prospect grades if they're ready to have a prospect grade. So if I have a kid that's going into his freshman year and he's 155 pounds soaking wet, he's probably not getting a prospect grade already, all right? But if he's at the point where we think he's recruitable, and I'm going to get to the recruiting timeline here in a second, then we're giving guys a prospect grade. We don't release that like perfect game, and no disrespect to them, but 1 to 10, then I would have to give everyone a 7 so parents don't get mad at me. All right, so we have a system we use within us to be able to grade each guy. And it's not just us, we're talking to high school coaches and summer coaches, but every time you attend an event, you get a grade, and that helps us get to the rankings, which I'll get to in a second. And then after, in the winter, we have so many. Every 2 weeks, I'm sending out an email to college coaches with guys that fit where they're at with the recruiting timeline, and I just put their name on it because it just gives another avenue for a third-party source to send them guys that we think can play at the next level, and then they get to make their decision off that. It's not something that I'm talking to them, trying to push these guys. I can just go, hey, here's guys that we have rated as a college prospect. Tell you, look, if you're interested, let me know if you need anything else to help. All right, so those are a few things that we do that I don't think from the outside looking in, players know that we actually do. So to me, I think this is the most important subject that I think gets overlooked in the recruiting process from a player standpoint. I think some coaches recognize it, but I think it's one of the more important subjects we're going to talk about is understanding the recruiting timeline, all right? There's a thing that I call the recruiting gap that is real, and I don't think players know that because Division I's recruit all grade levels, all class levels at all times. Your Division IIs, 3s, JUCOs, NAIs, they're recruiting class by class, all right? And so I think the last number was 7.7% of high school guys go on and play at the next level. If you're Division I and you're an early recruit, I would say that number's less than 1%, okay? But high school guys don't understand this. So let's just use this year's classes, for example. So 23s, 24s, 25s, 26s, okay? These 25s, 26s, 24s are seeing their friends commit, and they think they're behind the 8 ball. And those 23s and 24s especially, because they've been doing this for 2 years. They've been putting up stats, going to PBR events, and they don't understand why they're not getting recruited. Well, if you're not a division level guy, that's not gonna happen for you until the summer going into your senior year is where the lower level divisions really pick up their recruiting because they have no reason to. Especially from like, if we're talking like a Division III standpoint, like they get their scholarships based on academic information. Yeah, they like you as a baseball player, but if they don't have that academic information, they can't even tell you what you'd have to pay anyways. So it takes them a certain amount of time where they have to get that information for you before they can tell you, hey, Genesis, you have to pay X to go to Otterbein, all right? And I think we're more lucky. The other point I'll hit on this that's not necessarily on here, I think we arguably have the best baseball in the country college-wise. If not, it's close. We have per capita, I think it's almost, I don't have this information, but I'd be shocked for population to college baseball program, we have to have one of the most, if not the most, all right? And then from a Division III standpoint, I think we have the best baseball in the country, and I lived it for 5 years. I don't even think it's really an argument. Last year, out of 8 teams that go to the College World Series, we had 2, and we were 1 game away from having 4, all right? Denison and Worcester lost on the last game of their 3-game series. If those 2 win, we have half the programs in the country at the College World Series. So my information for high school guys is always go watch that. There's a guy I coach right here that got drafted out of Otterbein, actually. I didn't know he was going to be here. But if you go watch these games, you're going to have a full, completely 180 different idea of what Division III baseball is as a prospect. I think we all understand that for the most part, but like when you're growing up and you see Division III, like when I was growing up, I didn't put a ton of value on that level. But then when you go watch that, they're going to see 90-mile-an-hour arms and pro position players, especially the way the transfer portal is and the logjam we have after COVID and everyone having 6 years. Like Division III baseball is real. So understanding that even if you have that dream to go play at an Otterbein, a Denison, all that, it's not going to happen till you're going into your senior year in that summer. All right, so you have that gap between am I a Division I prospect and when I'm able to get recruited, and that's like a 3.5-year gap. So understanding and telling players like this is going to happen, I think that's important for them to know. And from a showcase standpoint, like if you don't fit that timeline and you think that you're not ready to showcase, like then don't go to a showcase. There's a time for showcasing and there's a time for development. And I think if you understand this gap and coaches are honest with you, they can look at their players and be like, all right, hey man, I don't think you're a Division I guy, so let's spend these next 2 years really focusing on development so that when your recruiting comes around, then you're ready to showcase and you have the tools to showcase at the level that you're going to end up going at. Or if you're a Division I guy, go for it. Go as early as you can because you're trying to get as much information out there as you can. And I'm not saying there's no value in going to a showcase if you don't exactly fit this recruiting timeline, but I think it's important to understand it. Now, I'll explain that here in a second, but just being able for parents and players to understand, like, here's what I should expect, I think that would cause a lot less stress on families. All right, so now what events players should attend, all right, based on where they're at in the process. I just mentioned the timeline. That doesn't mean it's completely invaluable to go to a showcase when you're not in that recruiting timeline. I think the pluses for that is one, getting used to the showcase environment, and two, showing a line of development. I think that's really important. When I was at Wright State, we would look at 2 prospects, and if we only had 1 spot, we would look at their PBR film and go, okay, this guy was this at this time, he was this at that time. If you see positive progression there versus a guy that maybe hit a little bit earlier and he's not continuing to move that needle, then you can make your decisions based off that. So it's not completely invaluable. That'd be our open IDs, our prospect games, and our scout days, okay? The open IDs, prospect games, those are for anybody to attend, and we kind of use this as a funneling system. Scout days, we do that in the winter. If you've seen our website within specific organizations, that's really cool for us because we get to enter, look at their organization, and get to see some of their top prospects and talk to their coaches. I think that gives us a little bit more value. And then the next filter as you go down is the top prospect game. So if your guys are playing right now and they want to get recruited, that's the goal, is use an open ID to get to the top prospect games. If you go to an open ID, we have them in the summer and the winter. In the summer, then you're not paying for the top prospect games. Just so you guys know, this isn't something that everybody gets invited to and we're like, hey, now you're a top prospect, pay us $500 more. That's not how it works, all right? We're very selective from that. And if you go to an open ID in the summer and you get selected for the top prospect games, you pay for the t-shirt, that's it. It's like $25, I think. All right, so top prospect games, we also follow that timeline. And I think that's important for coaches to understand, is not only do we have to do a service for the players, but we have to do a service for these college coaches. And if you've ever seen our top prospect games, it's crazy. It's at Prasco Park. Last year, I think we had almost 150 schools at it, at each division. So we have to follow that timeline. If I invite a 25 that's not ready to get invited or get recruited by Division I schools, then I'm taking away, if we're talking about from last year, a 23 spot that is getting ready to get recruited by Denison, Ohio Dominican, or Tiffin, or something, a school in that lower level division. So we try to follow that. So this year, the 24s that we invite, we think are ready to get recruited by colleges of all divisions. If it's 25, 26, I doubt a 27, but who knows, then that guy, we believe, is ready to get recruited by Division I school. So I say that because there might be a 25 on your roster that you think is a better prospect than a 24 in attendance, but understanding the timeline helps you better understand the decisions we make, all right? Then we have the future games. This is for Ohio, this is our no doubt Division I prospect game. We take a team down, it's really cool. We go down to Lake Point. We compete against other states that are doing the same. This year was awesome. We got to beat the brakes off Florida, which was shocking to me. When I looked at the roster, I was like, are we sure we want to do this? It reminded me of when we were at Wright State. We went down and played Miami, Florida. They took infield. I'm like, what the hell are we doing here? But we ended up, the bats came out, and we had some fun. Went 2-1. It's a great experience for the coaches, and that has 300 college coaches. Every Division I school brings multiple guys to that. It's an incredible environment. That's a very small portion of players, though. And then you have Future 50, which is our guys going into their freshman year and identify, are we really heavily evaluating that, like what we're going to college place them right there? No, but shockingly, when we ask all you coaches and summer coaches, like, we get great players at that event. If you go back and look at the Future 50, it's incredible. We have several Vanderbilt commits, Ohio, it's unreal. So that's kind of a fun thing where we get to kind of put on the future games for Ohio for these younger guys, and they get to play with the quote-unquote best players at their age now, and we can track their development. And then the Super 60s, what's going to be going on in a few weeks, that's the national event. We'll have 1 to 3 guys from Ohio each year. That's for pro scouts. That's for the best of the best. This year we have 3. That hardly ever applies to most of the guys, but if you're going to that, that means you're a guy that thinks is a possible draft guy. our spring and summer coverage, all right, I'm not going to go deep into this. This is all the stuff we do, but I will tell you that we're really trying to grow in this. And if you've seen over the past years, it's exploded, all right? We have our tournament director, Phil O'Shea, here in the summers. He's been phenomenal. Our summer tournaments are blowing up, all right? We had none like 2-3 years ago, and now we have like, how many teams do we have?
Well, across the thousands.
Okay, we have over 1,000 teams coming to our stuff this summer, and we have guys that we train to scout each of those that are taking all the social media stuff we were talking about. But the spring is where I'm the coolest part for us, to be honest, is we're creating these spring classics. We're trying to put really good teams together, and we get to scout that individually. And you guys know this. The summer is awesome, but the spring, the passion you get from that. So it's really cool. Where not only we get to scout it, see if a guy can play in games that we saw in the winter, but also we get to cover these high intensity games and to get to see you guys handle that environment. And we had 2 when we first started. I think we have 7 or 8 spring classics this year. We're putting together really good teams, getting a deeper look at the talent, but also being able to document that for you guys and those players to have the memories of that as well. All right, save this for last. I'll go quickly through this, and then I'm gonna leave about 3 to 5 minutes for any questions. The rankings. I hate the rankings with a passion, all right? I'm the one that makes the final decision, and I can't stand it. When I first started doing this, I thought this is gonna be the coolest thing in the world. I get to rank the players in the state of Ohio. Within about 3 weeks, I would have given it to anybody in the world that wanted it, all right? Because of the parent emails and the actual, how it works, it's an imperfect system. Now, I promise you, we work harder than anybody in the country on trying to get it as right as possible. We talk to summer coaches, high school coaches, pro scouts. Me and Genesis spent almost a month and a half on it last year in total. Just we call it the lab. We get in there with a dry erase board. A player comes up and we're breaking down the grade we have to see if we're right or wrong. Call us if we don't know, if we're kind of in between. Talk to a summer coach, someone that's played against them. And then by the prospect grade I talked about earlier, we're just basing it off of college projections, how the rankings work, all right? And like I said, it's an imperfect system, but the other thing I want everyone to realize is if you look at the overall number, a lot of the times that can be incredibly confusing, all right? Because last year in one class, number 150 and number 225 had the same grade. So that's 75 dudes we have the same grade. But if you're looking at that from the outside looking in, you place a wholly different value on 150 to 225. And I understand that mentally from a player's point of view, but at most of this time, we're just splitting hairs, all right? And the value of this, I promise you not a single college coach is ever gonna take a kid because I have him ranked higher than this other kid. That's not what it's for, okay? It's for an identification system where we can kind of layer in these grades and we send out what our grades are to these college coaches. They can compare different players. So the value is being on the list. Where you're on the list, sometimes you can take it for a grain of salt. Now that's not saying, again, I wanna make sure we work hard on this and I'm OCD about it. That month is the worst month I get, and I have a newborn now, so we'll see. But I have no sleep already, and that just drives me insane. Especially from the mental or emotional side of things, when you have to drop a guy, that sucks. But we work as hard as you can, but as long as you're on that list, that's the true value of it, okay? Because then a college coach can go to the list, click in your name, but if you're ranked below another kid, that doesn't determine your college future whatsoever, all right? All right, I try to cover as much as possible. Anybody have any questions?